Hello and welcome back to this episode of the Engage 8 podcast. I am Josh with my co-host Mike. Before we get into anything today, do not forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We greatly appreciate it. We're trying to hit 100 subs this year. Today we are going to do the AFC and NFC East recap. We're going to go by each team in those two divisions, discuss all eight teams, their outlook for next year, and how they did this season. But before that, we had a couple All-Star weekends this weekend with the NBA and the NHL. We'll start with the NBA All-Star. Pretty disappointing as per usual for the past few years for the NBA. One of the biggest storylines is Wemby and Chris Paul cheating in the skills challenge. Apparently, they were told that on the three-point shooting part of the skills challenge, which if you don't watch the skills challenge, I don't blame you, but they do like passing, shooting, whatever, all that kind of shit, dribbling through cones, I think is one of the things as well. And on the three-point part of it, you either can make the shot and move on to the next 3 point, or you take all three shots and move on if you don't make one, which is such a dumb rule. I don't know why they don't make it. You just have to make a three. They're all NBA players. I think they can all make one three, but apparently you were not required to make a three. So Wemby, surprisingly, it wasn't Chris Paul that started this, but Wemby wanted to just have him and Chris Paul chuck up three random threes, not even really shoot them, and then just move on to the next one, which I guess is a pretty decent strategy. Wemby was kind of being the tryhard of the All-Star weekend, which I respect. I hope he sets the standard for a new era here. But apparently he went to all of the refs in the skills challenge all week and was saying, "Hey, can I do this? Can I do this?" Everyone told him yes, and then they did it, and then they told him he couldn't do it. So Wemby kind of got screwed a little bit there, but I respect him at least wanting to win on all of his events this weekend. The three-point contest kind of sucked this year. It really sucked this year. The scores were down overall. I know Tyler Hero, I think, set a record with like 31 in the last round, but overall the scores really sucked. Cam Johnson was really bad. Dame Lillard was bad. Who else was really bad in it? Jalen Brunson was okay. Cade Cunningham wasn't great. Norman Powell was horrible. It was a pretty disappointing three-point contest. And then the dunk contest, Mac McClung, an NBA player who's played like 10 minutes in the past year in the NBA, wins his third straight dunk contest. Jumping over the car, that dunk was sick. I really liked that dunk. I think Mac McClung should be a staple until he loses. It'd be great if we could see next year some of the stars of the league like Ja and Giannis and maybe one of Zach LaVine or Aaron Gordon as well as Mac McClung, because Mac McClung has to be in it until he loses. It'd be great, but we say this every single year at this time. All the NBA dudes come on Twitter, all the stars, and they're like, "Oh, I got to do this next year. Who else is down?" And then they never end up doing it. So I don't expect that to happen. I expect us to come back here a year from now and see Mac McClung beat a bunch of rookies and G League players once again.
Yeah, All-Star Saturday night just really wasn't great. Almost the Friday night game was almost more entertaining than the Saturday night game with Kai Cenat and
Yeah.
Drewski just clip farming all over the place. But yeah, Saturday night, the dunk contest, Mac McClung showed up. He was great. Even Castle was very good in the dunk contest. But the three-point contest wasn't great. And the Rising Stars, or the skills challenge, every year they do it's slightly different, and just not really a fan of the team thing with Wemby and Chris Paul. And they obviously tried to cheat the way, which is honestly the best part of the skills challenge there. But yeah, they got kicked out. That was unfortunate. Then you go to the Sunday game for All-Star Weekend in the Chase Center, which seems to be pretty much just a corporate arena. I wish they would have done it in like Oracle Arena. That would have been very cool. But they have the tournament style basketball with the Rising Stars team coming in, playing the three different All-Star teams, Shaq OGs, and just again wasn't good. I was never hated the old format of the fourth quarter you go to 24 points. I thought it was just fine. Maybe the players don't take it super seriously. They're not trying as hard as possible, but it's still entertaining to watch some of the crazy things that they can do. And instead, we get this format where I think the first game was 10 minutes, second game was 12 for 54, and then the third game was 10:40. So a total of 33 minutes and 41 seconds of basketball. Yet the entire show was 2 hours and 26 minutes long. Just really not great. We had Kevin Hart walking around talking all all the NBA players, just talking shit, which was just kind of annoying. If you want if you want the All Stars to take it more serious, you can't have Kevin Hart walking around making fun of them for 20, 30 minutes in between every single game. I like seeing some of the TNT stuff to honor those guys, but when they did their big ceremony in the championship game, it took like 20 minutes just in the middle of the game. You think they would do it before or maybe after the game, but no, they did it for about 30 minutes in between the game, and it was just annoying. They only had two mics, so Ernie keep having to tell Shaq and Charles to hand the mic over to their people. But I hope they don't do this next year. I would rather them just play the normal game how they have been. I've never hated it, but they're gonna have to. I know Silver's gonna try to find a way to make it more entertaining, and we'll see what he does.
Yeah, I'm gonna miss the TNT crew. I loved the ceremony. I hated that it was in the middle of the game. They had Shea waiting on the free throw line for legitimately 30 minutes, which, like I said, that's basically a typical OKC Thunder game. But regardless, I liked the tribute. It's well deserved. It's not going to be the same without those guys in the NBA. I hope that whatever network takes it over can manage to recreate that magic at least a little bit. But yeah, I think the format had potential with these guys playing. It was slightly more defense. It was slightly more defense in this game, especially in the championship. But still, it's when you have NBA players and you're going to 40 points, that sounds good in theory, but they're NBA players. They're chucking threes. They're going to get to 40 points in a very short amount of time, especially if you're calling fouls in this game, which they were. So I don't like that at all. I think the only way you could fix this is doing like maybe like a USA versus the world with the All Stars, which might be a little bit difficult if you only want to use All Star players, but they also let the Rising Stars play on Sunday. So it doesn't really make much sense what they're doing. Adam Silver, I want to give him credit. I know a lot of people hate him. He's had a lot of bad ideas, but he at least tries. He's trying whatever he can do to make this league better. He put in the play-in tournament. He put in the Emirates Cup / in-season tournament. He's messed with the All-Star game the past few years. He's at least showing effort to improve the game, which I really expect, or which I really respect from him. And I was thinking the other day, all the All-Star games, every single one except for the MLB has just been completely fucked with now. You have the NHL completely eliminate theirs, NBA change theirs every single year, and then the NFL, of course, is just a joke now with the Pro Bowl, which that was bound to happen eventually. But yeah, disappointing All-Star weekend for the NBA for sure.
Very disappointing. And you see Adam Silver, like you said, they have the end season tournament. They made the All-Star game a tournament. He does love tournaments.
He does.
This
He's a
one,
tournament merchant.
yeah, this one didn't really work out. Steph Curry does win MVP in his home arena for the All-Star game. So that is his second Kobe Bryant All-Star game MVP. So congrats for him. He hit a half-court three. That was maybe the highlight of the game. But really, with the games being only to 40 points, like you said, they went by so quick. There really wasn't many highlights. Usually, each year we at least get a couple highlights. That didn't happen here. And hopefully next year they make it more about basketball and less about everything else. I mean, they had in between the other game too, they had about a 20-minute break of Mr. Beast giving out money.
Yeah, I missed
And
that, unfortunately.
and yeah, and Kyrie Irving did steal or tried to steal some money from the guy, but it didn't work out. Kevin Durant made him put it back, so that was kind of funny. But
Good
yeah,
guy Kyrie had a bit of a weekend though. You see the clip of him rebounding for the fans, and everybody's like, "Oh, Kyrie is just this great guy." All you need is one clip like that from one of these nonchalant NBA dudes, and everybody's like, "Oh, this guy's the best."
yeah,
It's hilarious. I do want to correct myself. It was not Tyler Hero that had 31. He did win, but the 31 was Buddy Hield in the opening round, which tied Warriors teammate Steph Curry and then Tyrese Halliburton in 21 and 23 for the highest score ever. But it's pretty,
that sounds like Buddy Hield.
yeah,
Really good start, fade away.
yeah, exactly. And the numbers are obviously a bit skewed because they've added like 15-point shots in there or
Hmm.
whatever. But we could talk about NHL a little bit here. The Four Nations tournament has been an absolute smash success for the NHL. They killed it, which even makes it tougher for the NBA. Their biggest weekend is or their biggest day is usually Christmas. The NFL cucked them this year, and then comes around to the All-Star game. They debut this new format. They're ready to see how it goes, and then the NHL just absolutely eats their lunch here. USA Canada game, 3 fights in 9 seconds was just phenomenal. Absolute W for the NHL. We get a USA Canada 2 in the title game, which I'm just so excited for. And this is the difference in the NBA and the NHL and why the NBA I think needs to switch to a something to do with the nations. Because when teams put their country's jersey on, it's hard to not care. It doesn't matter if it's All-Star weekend. It doesn't matter if you're worried about getting injured for the future of the season. You completely forget about everything that's going on with your team in the NHL, and you put that USA jersey on. You put Sweden, Finland, Canada, and all those teams are trying their absolute hardest to win for their country. So this might be, honestly, I think this might be the biggest W for the NHL in our lifetimes.
Yeah, this has been one of the biggest W's for the NHL. They had been last year, their All-Star weekend was just as embarrassing as the NBA's was this year. I think it was I can't think of who it was, but it was someone doing the skills challenge and just completely not trying at all. Kucherov, I think it was Kucherov. But we go into this year, they try a new thing with the Four Nations tournament, and it's been a complete success. Canada, Finland, Sweden, and the USA. The USA Canada game, the first 9 seconds was probably better than anything the NBA did all weekend with the three fights.
Right.
The Chichucks have taken this very seriously, and so has Team USA. They went down 1-0, came back, went up 3-1, beat Canada 3-1, and now, after a couple more games, they are playing tonight for the championship, USA versus Canada. It's going to be
Tomorrow.
an electric. Oh, it's tomorrow?
Yeah, it's tomorrow at 8.
Oh, so they get an
Thursday at 8
extra.
p.m.
Okay, I'll take it. I thought it was tonight, though. That's a long break for them in general, though.
Rest up.
Yeah, good for the teams that don't have to, the players that don't have to play it for the Four Nations face-off. They get a lot of rest, but.
Yeah.
Um, we go into the championship game, USA Canada. It's going to be another great one. I think this is a great tournament. I don't know if they can do it every single year because I know every other year now they're going to have the World Cup of hockey or whatever, and then every 4 years, obviously, they have um, the Olympics. So
Yes.
it'll be interesting to see if they continue this every single year or
I
not.
just
But
say do it. Just do it. Why not? It's
the
like
issue
four
with this
games.
is kind of how I think what could happen slightly is like the NBA had in 2020 with their All-Star game, how that game was phenomenal, and then the next year it got a little worse, and then it got a little worse. I'm worried that that could happen with this, but like you said, playing for their countries could keep them playing if it at 100%. So we'll
I
see.
don't think it'll end up like the NBA because the NBA, I feel like
Not as severe, but
basketball in general is just like the most nonchalant sport where it's like if you look like you're not trying, like that's cool. To people, that's just not like it's just not like that in hockey.
yeah,
Like the best plays are when you hit somebody hard as hell. They're not when you dribble the ball up slowly and chuck a half quarter and it goes in. Like there's no real. It's hard to play hockey nonchalant. It's so easy to play basketball nonchalant. So I think it'll
that's
be
true.
great. You also have the opportunity where you can add Russia in, who I'm pretty sure is
Oh,
banned from the Olympics, so that wouldn't be much of a problem for them. And they of course have some great hockey players. Or you really like I would have no problem with just a USA Canada best of three.
yeah,
Like I think
honestly.
everybody would be cool with that.
There's a lot of Finnish and Sweden hockey players though, so
Yeah, I'm not disrespecting them, but
it is also hard because an All-Stars is kind of like a measure. I mean, it's not a great measure of players for like their career, how many All-Star appearances they have, and to not have that is a little rough for some of these players. It's just different, I guess.
yeah, yeah, I guess. I guess you could just announce them as all stars and then
You could, yeah, an all-star
just
team,
have
kind
the
of like an
USA and
all-pro
Canada
team.
team plays, yeah. Just do friendlies even. Like
Yeah.
they do that in soccer all the time, and it's entertaining when it's rivals. So I think it would be great, but we'll see what they do. I think the Olympics is definitely going to play a factor. Olympics is next year, right? 26
Yeah,
is Winter
should be, yeah.
Olympics. So
Yeah, and then the World Cup hockey is every 4 years, so it's every
I
other
was about to
year
say,
for
yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's
that would
every
be
other
crazy
year. I just meant it was every other year between a World Cup of
that they
hockey
would have
and,
these. Yeah,
and the Olympics.
I guess they could do that as well. So we get USA hockey every year. That would be great. But
Yeah,
that's about all I have for the two All-Star weekends, if you want to call it that.
that's all I got.
All right, so we will start our division recaps now. Our next four episodes, if you didn't see the last pod, our last four next four episodes will be recapping the divisions in the NFL. We're gonna do both East, both North, both South, both West at the same time. So today we are gonna start with the AFC East, and we will go in order of standings. We'll start with the Buffalo Bills, who finished 13-4, won the AFC East, lost, of course, in the AFC Championship to the Kansas City Chiefs. They finished 11th in passing offense, 9th in rush offense, 21st in pass defense, and 13th in rush defense. I was definitely wrong about a few things with this team, but I'll start with some things I think I was right about. I didn't believe Josh Allen, or sorry, I'll start with some things that I was wrong about. I didn't believe that Josh Allen could overcome a weak wide receiver core without making too many mistakes. Of course, that was not the case. He was able to go out there, win the MVP. He had arguably his best season this year, despite not having the best wide receiver core. The O line, which I thought was going to be around mid level, was very, very good. One of the best O lines in the league this year. I was dead wrong about them. I was right about the secondary having major issues, losing both safeties and multiple corners hurt them really, really badly. Came back to bite them in the playoffs. They had some injuries, but even when healthy, this wasn't a fantastic defense by any means against the pass. Sean McDermott, though, I've been saying it for a couple weeks now. I think he's on one of the hottest seats in the NFL going into next season. Another disappointing exit this year or next year, and you probably have to start fresh. You can't continue to waste Josh Allen's good years, as we've been saying, especially if the defense is lackluster again. With him being a defensive head coach, you need to be able to go produce effective defenses year in and year out for your star quarterback. Although they struggle with talent at points, he's a defensive head coach. If he's going to be the head coach of one of the best teams in football, he needs to be able to overcome that. And if he's not, I think you got to cut your losses sooner rather than later and maybe bring a Mike McCarthy in next year.
Yeah, that would be crazy to bring in Mike McCarthy. That could be a huge thing for this Buffalo team. Looking at what I said going into the season, I was right about a couple things. I thought James Cook would have a big season. We saw him dominate in the end of the season prior. He was great. I thought Joe Brady could be very solid for him. But the one thing I was wrong about was I said I think Dalton Kincaid will emerge as a top five tight end, or at least be in the conversation. We really didn't see that happen this year from Dalton Kincaid. He was solid, 448 yards this season, but still wasn't as good as you'd like to be. Defensively for this team, I was expecting them to be a little bit better. We didn't see that this year. Doug McDermott, that's been kind of his thing, is he's the defensive guy, and this defense wasn't great. So how do you judge a head coach then if his unit hasn't been doing good, but the offensive unit with Joe Brady was great? In the playoffs, the offense was good. In that game against the Chiefs, I thought Brady did coach a little bit scared, like going for all those fourth and like those tush pushes late in the game. I think hurt him. But we'll see if they can get more confident next year going into him being his second year coaching this offense. They were top 10 in yards per game, second in the NFL in points per game at 30.9. They were great. Obviously, like you said, Josh Allen won MVP. He was phenomenal this season. But I think just going into next season, the defense has to improve. In big games when it mattered most, we saw them give up big games. We saw it against the Rams. We saw it against the Lions. Saw it in the playoffs against the Chiefs. They were really unable to stop Mahomes. I know that's been a thing, but you got to find a way to change it if you want to finally get over that hump. They are going to lose a couple, or they have some key free agents that they may keep, may lose. DeMar Hamlin, Rasul Douglas are two big ones. Amari Cooper, who they traded for mid-season, was a solid acquisition for them, but they were really just a receiver by committee. We saw
Was
Khalil
he?
Shakir be big. Yeah, I mean, he made a couple plays, but yeah, overall, really, it was just Khalil Shakir was big. Mac Hollins was huge in the playoffs for him. Rookie Keon Coleman was solid for him, and then Kincaid and Dalton Knox were a solid tight end duo. But I expect them to just really focus on getting that defense better and maybe bringing in just one more weapon for Josh Allen to throw to.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you said about Joe Brady. I think a lot of people would disagree and say that going for it on fourth down all those times it's an aggressive move. It's not a scared move, but the way he went about it was 100% a scared move. Being so afraid to pass the ball in those situations or even give the ball to James Cook, who's been one of the better backs in the league this year, just resorting to QB sneak, QB sneak, QB sneak, QB sneak over and over and over was a scared move. So I completely agree with that, and hopefully he can overcome that yip a little bit. But
And I
next
think
team.
he will.
Yeah, no, I agree as well. And he was in line to get a head coaching job. So
Hmm.
they lucked out there. But
That was a big keep.
the Dolphins, second in the AFC East, 8-9, missed the playoffs. They finished 16th in pass offense, 21st in rush defense, 10th in pass defense, and 8th in rush defense. Definitely was wrong about how good this team would be, but they should have been better. Tua injury obviously derailed them, but the team was pretty good when he was in. The Dolphins have to get a backup quarterback next year. If you have a guy like Tua, who you know is probably going to have to miss some games, you need to get a reliable backup. It's killed them year after year now. I don't understand how they can keep going into future seasons with bad backup quarterbacks. You obviously had Huntley this year, and why do I always forget bro's name, who's just absolutely horrible? Jesus, I'm completely blanking on his name. He has a girl's name, doesn't he?
What are you talking about?
Their other backup quarterback. Why am I forgetting his
Oh,
name?
Snoop
No, I said Snoop.
or Skyler.
Skylar Thompson. Yeah, see, I knew he had a girl's name. Yeah. But yeah, he's horrible. They absolutely need to get a
Yes.
better backup quarterback. I have an option for them that I'll talk about a little bit later. But in doing the prep for this pod, if you look closer at the Dolphins season, they weren't that bad, honestly. They finished top 10 in pass and rush defense. In their nine losses, three of those losses were without Tua. Two of them came to Buffalo. One of those, Tua got hurt in the middle of the game. Two more came to playoff teams in Houston and Green Bay. And then you have two losses remaining. One was a 1 point loss to Arizona in Tua's first game back. And then the last one, of course, was the Week 18 loss to the Jets after they were already eliminated. So they did what they had to do and won games that they should have won. If Tua doesn't get hurt, this is no question a playoff team, and they're a lot better than the 8 and 9 shows. I still have confidence in this team going forward. I still like Mike McDaniel. I still like Tua. He's just not healthy. They just have to get a backup quarterback, and this defense is a lot better than teams give them credit for. So I like the Dolphins to be a playoff team next year, despite how bad they finished this year.
I can see that being a thing. I think they can be a playoff team. They should have been a playoff team if Tua was healthy, but like you said, their backup quarterbacks, Huntley and Skylar, just were not good. They just need to be. I don't know if that's a Mike McDaniel thing where this offense is just so confusing that it takes so much time to get into. But we did see Snoop Huntley later in the season look a little bit better, but his first couple games starting, he did not look good at all. Going into the season, I was pretty right about what I have in my notes. I said Tyreek Hill's getting older. How will his production be able to continue? That was not the case. He really did not have a great season this year. Um, didn't even get to 1,000 yards. Finished with 959 yards, only 6 touchdowns for Tyreek Hill. That's a really down year. I thought Devon Achane would have a big season, and while he kind of did have 900 yards rushing, was good in the receiving game. When Tua wasn't healthy, Devon Achane really wasn't much of a factor in the receiving game, in the running game. The running game in general really wasn't good at all when Tua was out. The defense for them wasn't really great either throughout the season. They had their moments, but just the fact that this team was unable to compete without Tua is just what killed the team, like you said. And although I still see them being a playoff team if Tua's healthy, I don't think this team has close enough, even with this regime and Mike McDaniel. I don't think he's the type of guy who can go out and win a Super Bowl, go out and beat the Chiefs and the Ravens in the playoffs or the Chiefs and the Bills. I don't see this team being able to do that. But with Tua on the field, they will be a playoff team. They will be competent. They are going to lose a lot of guys this year, a lot of depth guys just on both sides of the ball. Depth offensive line, depth defense, Javon Holland, Jordan Poyer, Kendall Fuller, Anthony Walker, Calais Campbell. They have a lot of free agents on this team, so it'll be interesting to see how they recraft this team going into next year. They have a big offseason and they need to build around Tua. And like you said, I would probably be in their best interest to get a backup quarterback.
Yeah, and I think their path is just get the 1 seed. You get
Yeah,
the one
it's
seed, and
gonna.
it's a lot easier if you can play in Miami. Because we
Yeah,
know they can't play in the cold.
they had the game in was that Green Bay this year where it was really cold and
Yes.
didn't show up at all again.
Yes, that was one of their losses. But I don't know. I mean, I think they can if they can get the 1 seed, they're definitely capable to win 2 games in Miami and then go play in an indoor stadium.
I don't know. I just don't think they have enough to beat the two of those top three teams.
Yeah, I mean they need some stuff to break their way, definitely. But yeah, we can move on to the Jets here. I'm realizing in this recap that this was probably the recap I was dreading the most because some of my worst takes are in here. I, of course, had the Jets winning this division. They finished 5-12, third in the AFC East, missed the playoffs. 17th in pass offense, 31st in rush defense, third in pass defense, or sorry, 31st in rush offense, third in pass defense, 17th in rush defense. I was so wrong about this team. I loved the defense going into the season. I thought they'd have a great run game offensively. I thought their O line would be a lot better. I thought their weapons would be a lot better, especially when they brought in Devontae. Their O line struggled all year. Unfortunately, it's been a problem for them for greater part of the last decade, honestly. Had absolutely zero run game early in these games and had to pass for most second halves because they were down by so much. Had so much coaching turmoil all season, going from Salah to Ulbrich, and they just couldn't find anything, couldn't get anything going. Their pass defense was good. It is deceiving because they were down by so much and teams had to run against them, but still, I do think their pass defense is good. Rodgers, I talked about it a couple pods ago. I don't remember when it was now, but he finished eighth in passing yards, 28 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Pretty good season for him overall, outside of the fact that they lost so many games. Jets now have to decide what to do at quarterback. I don't know if you heard. I heard some rumors of them possibly going for Kyler Murray, which
Oh wow.
would be interesting if they decided to do that. And I think, for the most part, I think if the Cardinals got a decent offer, they would take that for Kyler Murray and just try to start fresh, maybe. Although I do really like Kyler. I think he'd be good on the Jets. I still kind of like the Jets, unfortunately, because they have so much talent and I really like this defense, but I want them to draft a quarterback. I remember getting into a debate with our friend Sar a couple weeks ago about how many quarterbacks would go early in the draft, and he swore there would only be two in the top 10. We're already seeing, as we do every single year, guys are shooting up. There's going to be more quarterbacks that go in the top 10. It's just a quarterback needy league. Jackson Dart is looking like he's going to end up in the top 10 now, which is just absurd. But I could definitely see the Jets taking a guy like Jackson Dart, which I think is good. I think you start fresh, you line up your quarterback with your GM and your head coach, like I said last episode, and I think you're going to find some success there. I'm probably going to pick them to finish decent next year too, unfortunately.
That's crazy. I mean, they do have a new head coach in Aaron Glenn after firing Robert
Forgot
Saleh,
him.
but he, like you said, they just need a quarterback for him to really have a successful tenure. I think he can go and build a culture, but it's a lot harder to build a culture when you don't have a quarterback and you're not winning. You need a quarterback to build around. Going into the season, I thought Mike Williams would have a solid year. Looking at my notes going in, I thought Garrett Wilson would be a top five receiver. He had 1,042 yards last year with very shaky QB play. This year he finished with 1,104, so not much of an improvement there from him. Obviously, Devontae Adams coming in did change that a lot. Devontae and Aaron Rodgers have a huge connection going way back, and they went all in this season, before the season, during the season, they went all in, and it still didn't work. They finished bottom 10 in the NFL in points per game. Like you said, Rodgers did have decent stats, but the wins were not there. The culture fell apart. Jeff Olbrich couldn't keep it together. Late season, we had players talking about how they can't wait to go to different teams next season. Just a season that Jets fans want to forget at this point. They're just used to losing, though. They're losing a lot of guys on that defensive side of the ball. Just a lot of depth guys. They're losing DJ Reed, potentially Chuck Clark, Jalen Mills, Javon Kinlaw, Solomon Thomas, Hassan Reddick, and obviously they're losing Aaron Rodgers as the quarterback on the offensive side of the ball. It'll be interesting to see whichever quarterback they go for, if he will have Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson to throw to, or if Devontae Adams is gonna find his way out of New York too. So really, really disappointing season from the Jets here. 5-12. They do have the seventh draft pick here, and it looks like they probably should go quarterback, but we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know how good they'll be next year, but I promise to the Jets fans who have been in hell for the past 15 years, approaching 2 decades here soon, Aaron Glenn is going to have these guys playing harder than you've seen them play in recent years. You're not going to see the lazy shit you've seen from them, where guys who have so much talent just aren't playing to the best of their ability. Aaron Glenn's going to get that out of those guys, and I expect them to at least show more effort than they did this season. But we can move on here to the Patriots. 4-13 finished last in the AFC East. They missed the playoffs. They finished last in passing offense, 14th in rushing offense, 12th in pass defense, and 22nd in rush defense. Overall, though, an ideal season for the Patriots, which you don't say much about a team when they finish last in multiple stats and back half and the others. But Drake May showed he was probably worth the number 3 pick, which a lot of people doubted. He was a solid decision maker all year. He was successful at times in the worst offensive situation in football. No weapons, mid offensive line, mid running backs, and he showed he can be a mobile quarterback too. So I have a lot of confidence in Drake May going forward. They fired Gerard Mayo after just one season. They bring in Mike Vrabel, who we've talked about over and over. I have high hopes for them going forward with Vrabel. They have to get Drake May some protection, some weapons ASAP, though. I know they're going to address that in the offseason. They have to. Vrabel's a great defensive head coach, so I think he can get the most out of this lackluster roster, even if they're not great talent wise next year. They might not finish with a great record next year, but I think they're going to improve on a year to year basis. And very similar to what I just said 2 seconds ago about Aaron Glenn, I think Mike Vrabel's going to be able to get the most out of his talent here. And I think going forward, we're going to see the Patriots return to glory a little bit.
Yeah, I can see that happen with Mike Vrabel coming in, Gerard Mayo out. I think that was the right move, although a lot of people think it might be premature. When you have a chance for Mike Vrabel with this young quarterback, I think that's a great thing to do. Bring in Josh McDaniels as your OC and a good old New England head coaching staff. It's going to be very good. Drake May, solid rookie season. Like you said, he threw for 2,276 yards, 15 touchdowns, 10 picks. Well, I mean, it doesn't sound great, but he really didn't have many weapons to throw the ball to at all. When you watch the games, he looked very solid, very competent, looked like he knew what he was doing, and I think he could be a very good quarterback for the future. Their top receiving guys: Hunter Henry, Demario Douglas, Keyshawn Boutte, Austin Hooper, Kendrick Bourne. Just not really high-end guys that you would want your rookie quarterback throwing to. No one got over 700 yards for this team. You had KJ Osborne down there, only had 57 yards. Polk, the rookie, only had 87 yards receiving. So if they can get some new weapons there, they're going to have to. They have a decent running back with Ramondre Stevenson, Antonio Gibson as the backup. If they don't change that, it wouldn't be the worst. They just need to go out and get different receivers and tight ends. I mean, I guess Hunter Henry's solid. They just need to get some receiving weapons for Drake May to throw the ball to. They're really not losing too much at all in free agency, and what they're losing, they can deal with. I think Mike Vrabel coming in, just bringing some defensive guys that he likes, some guys that play very hard, and I think that could be big for this Patriots team, at least potentially fighting for a playoff spot. I can see them finishing around 8 and 9 next season with Drake May and just continue to improve and go forward.
Okay, we'll move on here to the awards. I will give each one of my awards for the division: Offensive Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, and MVP, as well as comparing them to my predictions preseason. Preseason Offensive Rookie of the Year, I had Keon Coleman. I am going to change that one to Drake May. Coleman had a good year, but Drake May showed so much potential going forward for this team. I think we're going to see him take massive leaps in the years to come. Defensive Rookie of the Year, I had Chop Robinson. I also have Chop Robinson now. There wasn't a ton of defensive rookies that made an impact in this division. Chop Robinson was solid. You talked about all the guys that Miami's going to lose on the defensive end going towards next season. I think having Chop Robinson in there and having him make a big leap will help them be able to stomach that a bit. Offensive Player of the Year, I had Garrett Wilson. I'm going to switch that to James Cook, most rushing touchdowns in the league this year. I think just from any player. I don't think that Josh Allen finished with more than him, but he did have a shit ton. James Cook, he had a great year this year in his second or third year.
I think it's his third.
Third year. Okay, so he had a great third year. I'm sure he's going to continue to make strides. This offensive line, like I said, deserves a ton of credit. They were great this year, but the Bills were able to play through their run game through a lot of the regular season. Unfortunately, that kind of bit them in the ass a little bit at the end when they needed to start passing it a bit. But James Cook's my offensive player of the year. Defensive player of the year, I had Jalen Ramsey. I'm going to switch that to a guy that gets a lot of hate, and in the beginning of the season, it was worth it. But the casuals don't really realize that he had a drastically improved back half of the season. I'm going to give it to Sauce Gardner. He was really, really good on the back half. He struggled early, but he got it together. He didn't have that slump that people thought he was going to go to earlier on in this season. I think he's going to continue to be one of the best corners in the league. I've been thinking he was overrated for many years now, but after seeing the hate he got early and continued to get throughout the season, even when he improved, didn't sit right with me. I think he deserves Defensive Player of the Year, and then MVP. Obviously, the MVP of the year was Josh Allen. I'm going to go with Josh Allen. I didn't apparently have an MVP for this division when we did it in the beginning of the year. I just don't have it in my notes. But Josh Allen, of course, he won the actual MVP, so I have to give him the MVP of this division.
Yeah, for me, very similar awards for this division. For D-Roy, I had Chop Robinson going into the season and Keon Coleman for O'Roy as well. I'm going to switch my O'Roy to Drake May and keep my deep Roy at Chop Robinson. I think Drake May just had a better season. Keon Coleman, it was just a receiver by committee. With Drake May, we didn't really know if he was going to start. He didn't start at the start of the season. We didn't know if he was going to start at all throughout the season, but he did. He came out and he was a very solid rookie quarterback. So I'll give my O'Roy to Drake May. For Opoy, I don't know exactly who I picked, but I think I picked James Cook. I had a trio of James Cook, Garrett Wilson, and Tyreek Hill, and I'm going to keep it at James Cook. For Depoy, I had Sauce Gardner going into the season. I think I'm going to keep it at Sauce Gardner. Like you said, he was solid in the back half, but also I'll give a mention to Christian Gonzalez. I think he's going to be a great corner for the Patriots going forward. And then for MVP, I had Josh Allen, and I'm obviously going to stick with that as he won MVP of the entire NFL, and he just had maybe the best season of his career. Just needs to finally get over that hump.
Okay, we can move on now to the NFC East recap. We'll start with the reigning defending Super Bowl champions, Philadelphia Eagles. They finished 14-3, won the NFC East, won the Super Bowl. They finished 30th in pass offense, second in rush offense, second in pass defense, and fourth in rush defense. Looking at that, maybe my takes from the year weren't as cold, but whatever. Some of my coldest takes of the year were on the Eagles, though. I was right about a couple things preseason. I'm going to start with where I was right. I had them winning the division. I had Quinyon Mitchell as D-Roy of the division. I had Saquon as MVP of the division. I agree with all of those still. We've spoken enough about this team over the past month and a half, so I'll keep it brief. No team had a better offseason than the Eagles. We said last episode, Howie Roseman proved that he is one of the better drafting GMs in football. Biggest weakness of this team was their pass offense, but when you can rely on the run so well and your offensive line is so dominant, you can overcome that mid quarterback play, which they did have. I know I gave Jalen Hurts studs the past couple weeks. He won Super Bowl MVP. It was a tough week for me being a Jalen Hurts hater, but I'm going to stand on what I said. I still don't think he's a top 10 talent in this league, a quarterback. They're probably going to lose Zach Bond, Maddox, Becton, Sweat, but they're still keeping most of their offensive line and their offense. Jalen Hurts, regardless of how good he was in the last two games, he needs to improve as a passer going into next season. If Roseman can bounce back from losing so many defenders, this team can easily repeat. And after seeing the masterclass he put on this offseason, I'm not going to put it past him to be able to retool and get ready for next season.
Yeah, he might be the best GM in the NFL right now.
One of them for sure.
Every movie makes seems to work out. They drafted a lot of the Georgia guys, and they've all really panned out. Nolan Smith's been great. Jalen Carter's been good, or he's been great. Jordan Davis has been good. They have so many guys on that defense that can make plays offensively. He brings in Saquon Barkley, and that was just the perfect move for this team. He was the offensive player of the year, and he was fantastic. Like you said, their passing offense was third worst in the NFL, but they had the number two rushing attack with Saquon Barkley, who almost got to 2,000, or he got to 2,000 yards. If you including the postseason as well, they were top 10 in scoring, top 10 in total yards per game. Getting Saquon Barkley was huge, and then maybe the biggest addition outside of Saquon Barkley definitely was the two new coordinators that they decided to go for, Vic Fangio and Kellen Moore. Vic Fangio's defense was fantastic. They were first in total yards per game, first in passing yards per game, second in points per game given up. Dominant all season. They had so much depth. They had so many guys that throw at you. The D line was fantastic. And then Kellen Moore had the offense playing very good, obviously, with Saquon Barkley being the main attraction. The offensive weapons are going to stay. They're still going to have Saquon, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Jalen Hurts, obviously, coming off of a Super Bowl. And that's really the main thing that they need for the offense. The offensive line should stay intact as well. And with Vic Fangio leading the defense, I trust him to find guys and make players that are going to fit the roles and play well. Like you said, Zach Bond might be gone. They might lose Oren Burks, Avonte Maddox. And I just trust Howie Roseman to replace those guys. They did lose Kellen Moore for the offense, so replacing him will be a big factor for offensive coordinator. They got to make sure you get the right guy for Hurts and them to do so. Jalen Hurts, like you said, the stats weren't there, but he rose to the occasion whenever he had to. He did in the Super Bowl, and Eagles finished 14-3, Super Bowl champions. So going into the season, I thought they might have a chance to make that big run, but I thought that secondary and the defense just wasn't as good. We saw the year prior that it wasn't. So they obviously did. It worked out for them. Brought back C.J. Gardner-Johnson. That was a nice move for him. And then the two rookies they drafted, Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, were fantastic. So just a great season. And 14-3, they were outside the lines the most dominant regular season team, or the Chiefs, I guess. But they were out there dominating wins, and they get it done.
I realized after we recorded the last pod, we didn't talk about Kellen Moore going to the Saints at all. Um, Good hire for them. I think he's been a good coordinator for the past few years, bouncing
Yeah.
around from different teams. Chargers, Cowboys, Eagles, I think were the three teams he was the coordinator for.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm wrong about that, but
I think he went
he,
from the Chargers to the Cowboys and then
yeah,
obviously the Eagles.
and he was good in all three places. Didn't always have the best head coaching, but still continued to have success with all the talent he had. I think he's going to be good in New Orleans.
I think he'll be good in New Orleans as well. I think he's going to be a solid coach. He is young, obviously, for this job, but I think he'll be able to get it done. And yeah, or it was Cowboys, Chargers, Eagles in order.
Right. Yeah. Okay. How old is he?
Um, he
36.
was yeah, pretty
Is he the
young.
youngest head coach in football?
I I would think so at this point. I think Mike McDaniel might have been the youngest.
McVay's 37. Let's see. How old is Mike
Yeah,
McDaniel?
Kellen Moore sees advantages to being the youngest head coach in NFL, so
Wow.
he is.
He's younger than what's his name? Why am I blanking on his name? The Seahawks head coach?
Oh, Mike McDonald.
Is he younger than him?
Mike McDonald is 37 as well.
37. Okay. So yeah, there's a group of those guys that are it's crazy that Sean McVay is still 37.
Yeah,
That is
there's a
just
lot of young
wild.
guys out there.
Got hired at 30, which is just ridiculous. But Okay, we'll move on here to the Washington Commanders, 12-5, second in the NFC East, loss, of course, in the NFC title game to the Philadelphia Eagles. They finished 12th in passing offense, fourth in rushing offense, sixth in pass defense, and 31st in rushing defense. A dream season for the Commanders here, really. Jaden Daniels was every bit of a stud that Washington thought he was going to be when they drafted him at number 2 overall. Daniels was able to overcome what was a lackluster cast around him. The offensive line was mid. They were better than people thought they were going to be, given how bad they were last year. But their receiving core outside of Terry McLaurin, Zacchaeus is okay. It's just nothing crazy. The running backs, they of course have Brian Robinson. They had Austin Eckler, who had moments this season, but this offense could have been a lot better around him, and he still succeeded at a high level. Washington's defense was really bad to start the season, especially versus the run. But as the season progressed, they just got better and better, and you saw them really get hot in that last 2.5 months of the season there. I think Dan Quinn did a masterful job with this team, especially defensively. I think they're only going up from here. They have a ton of cap space, so they're absolutely in the running to trade for a guy like Cooper Kupp or a guy like Myles Garrett, who would both, of course, drastically improve this team. I won't be shocked to see them have a worst year next year just because of how much they overachieved this season. It's hard to go back to the NFC title game, ask the Lions. It's hard to win 12 plus games every year in this league. It's just there's so much parity in the NFL. You can't expect that, especially with a young quarterback in Daniels. But I think they're a perennial playoff team for years to come. I don't see them dropping out of the playoffs anytime soon here. And I do want to give a ton of credit to Jaden Daniels. Didn't get hurt this year that much.
Yeah,
He got hurt. He
somehow.
missed what, a couple games, 2 games, I think. Maybe went out early in one of them, but he is a guy that doesn't slide very well. He's not the strongest built guy. My biggest concern, I mean, you could probably go back and find clips of me talking a year and a half ago about how I was scared about Jaden Daniels in the NFL because of the way he plays and his body. But he's so talented. He was able to not get hurt for too long this season. And when he did get hurt, Marcus Mariota was a pretty decent backup for them. So Dolphins should take notes there. And great season for the Commanders. Nothing bad you could say about them.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say neither of us were really expecting this to happen for the Commanders. They were way better than we would have expected. I think I predicted them to be last in the division, but I said I could swap them with the Giants. I thought it was a very strange situation to put Jane Daniels in, has some weapons with McLaurin. I said I wanted to see a Jahan breakout season for maybe the fourth year in a row that I've said that. Obviously, that didn't happen. He got traded to the Eagles pretty early into the season. Um, Dan Quinn, though, could help the defense, and I think he did. The defense was definitely better. They struggled versus the run all season, but they were solid versus the pass. And on the offensive side of the ball, Cliff Kingsbury was fantastic. Jaden Daniels was great. They were one of the better offenses in the season. They were top 10 in yards per game. And Jaden Daniels and his legs led this team to being the third best rushing yards per game team in the NFL. He was great on the ground, 891 yards, was their leading rusher. If Brian Robinson was healthy, he was very good and helped this rushing attack. He only played 14 games, left a couple games early, 799 yards finished for him, and then Austin Eckler as his backup. He was banged up as well this season. If they can keep Brian Robinson healthy, or maybe even just go and get a running back in the draft or free agency that's healthy, I think that could make this rushing attack even better and take it to the next level. I think keeping Cliff Kingsbury was massive for this team. I think that will help Jane Daniels going into his second season has the same head offensive coordinator and head coach that could help them. But the one thing that does worry me is this team had no expectations going into this season, and going into next year, they're going to have expectations to make the playoffs, to win a lot of games, and we'll see how Dan Quinn and Jane Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury can handle that. Like I said, I think the defense needs to improve, maybe the offensive line a little bit better, and if they do those two things, I think they could be one of the best teams in the NFL, but can they handle the pressure? They're not losing too many big name players. Bobby Wagner contest free agency. Jeremy Chin, Austin Seibert, he missed a lot of the season though. And on the offensive side of the ball, though, really not too much. Just guys like Zach Ertz and De'Ami Brown, who had a big game in the playoffs. But I think they should be ready to go next season and be one of the better teams in the NFL. Finished 12-5 and got to the conference championship. So
Did he have
we'll see
100
if they
yards
can
in that
build on it.
game?
No,
Yeah, big game.
I meant divisional round. Did I say conference championship?
No, you said divisional round.
Oh, I did. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think he had 100 yards in that game.
Still had a big game.
He had a big catch.
It's a little big game. It's all
Mike
right.
Samer still
You can admit it.
also had a pretty. No, I'm not gonna. Dude, he didn't have 100. He had like 80 yards. That's not a big game. His team had a big game. Everyone
He had a
wants to
big
talk
game.
about the Monreal St. Brown, De'Ami Brown thing. Monreal had like 140 yards in that game, didn't he? Or 120. He outplayed De'Ami Brown, which I mean,
I mean, think about what you just said.
I know. I'm not saying he's that they should be in the same conversation, but people want to pull up that clip over and over again. It's like,
Oh,
I'm like,
I never said they should be in the same conversation.
no, I'm not really talking about you. I'm more talking about the masses after that game. That just never sat right with me. It's not like bro went out there and had a generational game, hit 80 yards or whatever it was.
He had 98 yards and 6 catches. That's a solid game.
Yeah, solid game.
But it's a good game for De'Ami Brown. I think you
No, I
just
mean
forgot that it's
generational for
De'Ami Brown.
him. Yeah, I guess generational for him. Yeah.
And
Mike
his team got the
still
win,
though.
so
I want to give credit to him. He had a very good year. He's an undersized corner. I'm looking at him here on Google right now. They have him listed at 183, 5'10. That's a bit of a stretch if you ask me. But
that sounds like a
um,
Commander's corner.
yeah, but hey, it works, bro. He had
I
14
mean,
pass deflections, two picks.
it didn't work out for Emmanuel Forbes, unfortunately.
It didn't, but so far it's working out for Sammer still.
Yeah. And I
Um,
said going in, I think I mentioned him on my preview that I thought he could be a very good addition for him
oh
coming
wow,
out of
you gave
Michigan.
credit to a
I
Michigan
did.
guy. Wow.
I did. Because I was impressed because he was a receiver that converted to corner. And
Yeah, which is always cool. I like to see that.
he also did the Paul Bunyan celebration against Michigan State and then proceeded to lose the game. So that was great.
You got that on him, yeah. We'll move on here to Cowboys 7-10 finish third in the NFC East, missed the playoffs. Finished 10th in passing offense, 27th in rushing offense, 18th in pass defense, and 29th in rush defense. This Cowboys season was derailed when Dak went out, but they were really bad before that. It's not like they were looking like they were on a good trajectory when Dak was even in. They had zero run game. They had a lackluster defense with Dak the first few weeks, and they still looked dead early. They never really developed that run game, but their defense did get a lot better. Cooper Rush came in and won them a few games late in the season. He's one of the better backups in the league. Miami, like I said, I was going to say there's a guy that they should try to go after. He's a guy that a type of guy that you should go after because he's a great backup quarterback. And I'm not going to say he's as good as Dak, but he was able to go out there with the talent that Dallas had and win games, even when they didn't want to and they wanted to tank. He was able to win games. Miami needs to find them a guy like that. However, it's really, really hard to win football games if you have a bad rush offense and rush defense, regardless of who your quarterback is. You cannot let teams run all over you, and if you can't establish the run, you get yourself forcing into pass heavy. It's just a bad situation to be in. Schottenheimer is now in for Mike McCarthy. Will be interesting to see how that goes. McCarthy, in my opinion, I'm going to keep saying it. I think he was a very, very underrated head coach. I don't love this move to Schottenheimer for McCarthy, but we'll see how it works out. I do not have high expectations for the Cowboys going forward because they seem to be locked into this Dak deal. They seem to have made a rash decision at head coach. Maybe Jerry just didn't want to pay Mike McCarthy. But if the defense can improve, though, and they, of course, have Micah Parsons, who I'll talk about a bit later, had a pretty underrated season, they can still be competitive, of course.
Yeah, they can still be competitive. I thought the Brian Schottenheimer hire is very interesting. It'll be interesting if that works out for him. They bring in a solid defensive coordinator. They have weapons on defense. They have big name guys, Trayvon Diggs, Micah Parsons. They have guys that stand out, but they need more guys in the trenches, just more depth guys that don't have to that don't make big plays every play, but they're good on every play and just do their job. Can Dak bounce back next season? He just wasn't really good going into the season. He got that huge deal. So did CeeDee Lamb. And while CeeDee Lamb had a good season, Dak did not while he was healthy. He got that torn hamstring in week 9 that put him out for the rest of the season. And the departure of Dan Quinn must have been a big deal for his defense because, like I said, they just weren't as good. Offensively, they need to get that rushing attack going into next season. They were terrible on the ground this season. Every game, it was like beating a horse. It was just it was almost annoying how bad they were at running the ball. And considering it's been the Cowboys the last couple years prior, Tony Pollard wasn't great. But before that, Zeke and Tony Pollard were a solid duo, and they were really just a rush first team. And we saw with Mike McCarthy these last 2 years, that's really changed into a pass first team. Cooper Rush did come in for Dak Prescott and was solid. They were competent on offense, got the ball to CeeDee Lamb, didn't turn the ball over too much. But I don't think you can really win a championship or this division specifically with how great the Eagles are with Cooper Rush at quarterback and the surging Commanders, obviously. The defense, disappointing. They were very bad versus the run early in the season. Like I said, so many stars, and they just need the gritty guys who can make good plays on every down. Going into free agency, they are losing a couple bigger named guys. Eric Kendricks was on this team this season. Didn't have a great year. Zach Martin, contest free agency. Rico Dowdle, Cooper Rush, DeMarcus Lawrence. I mean, I don't know if they keep some of those guys, all those guys. The offensive line needs to get better, but with Dak Prescott, it's really all comes down to if Dak Prescott can bounce back with Brian Schottenheimer as the head coach, and that's really just the main thing for the Cowboys at this point with how much money they've invested into him.
I think fans overlook a little bit the trading and in division and teams going to other or coaches going to other teams in division because it's like, okay, we just want to improve. We don't care if we need to get a guy out, we need to get a guy out, whatever. This division is a perfect example of why you cannot let that happen. You see Saquon obviously go from the Giants to the Eagles. The Eagles win the Super Bowl. The Giants are 3-14. You see, like you just said, Dan Quinn goes from the Cowboys defensive coordinator to the head coach of the Commanders. The Commanders go when they make the NFC title game. The Cowboys defense completely falls apart without Dan Quinn. So if any fans are wondering why teams refuse to trade to other teams in the division, this is why it almost always ends bad, especially if it's talent. So
Yeah.
you just cannot let that happen. But we can move on here to the final team. Giants finished 3-14, last in the NFC East and missed the playoffs. 28th in pass offense, 22nd in rush offense, ninth in pass defense, and 26th in rush defense. I really liked the Giants as a sleeper team early on in the season, not preseason, but early in the season, first couple games, because of how good their defense was and how great their pass rush was doing, but that eventually regressed. I do want to say, though, this defense does have a ton of talent. Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Adoree Jackson, a ton of talent on this defense, but their offense was so bad. This defense was constantly on the field. The best thing this season for them was getting out of that Daniel Jones contract, kind of. The O line ended up being unbelievably banged up early, but Thomas had a great start. Michael Smith was solid. So they have a little foundation there. This offense was much different before Thomas got hurt. It derailed them completely. He was having his best season, of course, and the best season of a Giants O lineman we've seen in a long time. And then, of course, gets hurt, misses the rest of the season. This team completely fell apart after that. Despite how bad this organization has been run recently, they still managed to finish with the number 3 overall pick. So they still have leverage now. Weapons like Neighbors, Robinson, Tracy are all solid. So the incoming quarterback will have a decent base. I hated how this team was looking a year ago at this time. They were in a bad contract situation with multiple people. The Saquon thing was bad. The Daniel Jones thing was bad. A lot of their rookies weren't panning out. But I now see a foundation for this team. And I think if they can hit on a QB, they're going to be in a lot better spot than some of these other bad teams. A lot of these other bad teams don't have weapons like Neighbors, Robinson, and Tracy. A lot of these other teams don't have great defensive players like Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau, Adoree Jackson. So I think they have a pretty decent base. I'm not saying they're a quarterback away by any means, but getting a quarterback in there that can have a solid rookie season and perform right away will just skyrocket this team and put them in a significantly better spot 2, 3 years down the road.
Yeah, I completely agree. Getting a quarterback for this team would be massive. I think Tyrone Tracy is a solid running back. And you look at the rookie class that Joe Schoen, GM of the Giants, had, and the rookie class was pretty good. Malik Neighbors obviously was solid. Drew Phillips was good. Tyler Newman was solid. Tyrone Tracy. They had a solid draft going into the season. It's just really the Daniel Jones situation and then the hard knocks. Saquon Barkley going to the Eagles, winning Offensive Player of the Year in the Super Bowl situation did not help. I mean, defensively, they have a lot of stars, specifically on the D line. You got Kayvon Thibodeau. You got Brian Burns. You made that big move for him. Obviously, they have Dexter Lawrence, who might be, he's definitely the best player listed out of all of them. Losing Xavier McKinney did hurt the defense, but I think they have the stars on defense, but it's kind of another situation like the Cowboys where you have a lot of stars. You need more guys that go and make consistent plays every play that are good. And then on the offensive side of the ball, you really just need a quarterback. It kills that Saquon Barkley left for in that situation, and you had the hard knocks. Watch it happen. That just makes it hurt 10 times more. They're not losing too many guys in the offseason. Azeez Ojulari, Isaiah Simmons, Adoree Jackson, those are all guys you can kind of afford to lose. Tim Boyle and Julak. Tim Boyle, wonder if a team will pick him up and continue the trend of having Tim
The
Boyle play.
Dolphins probably will.
Yeah, the Dolphins will get Tim Boyle
That'll be
as their
their big
backup
backup
quarterback.
quarterback pickup. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
but
think he
Malik
played there
Neighbors,
before actually. I feel like Tim
Really?
Boyle was a Dolphin. You can
I
continue.
think
I'm gonna look
so.
that up.
I can just click on it right
Oh yeah, I
here.
look up. You look up Tim Boyle, and he's in a
He's
Dolphins
in the
jersey.
Dolphins. Yeah, he's in the
Yeah.
Dolphins jersey.
So yeah,
That's not
tough.
shocking. You don't want. I think Tim Boyle being on your team might be a curse, honestly.
Yeah, he's been on a different team every single year except for his first 2 years. He was on Green Bay. Green Bay,
Yeah.
Green Bay, Detroit, Chicago, Jets, Miami, Giants.
I guess he wasn't a curse to the Green Bay teams,
No, he was. I guess he. No, he wasn't. But
but
let's
ever
see.
since he's been on a path of destruction.
Mhm. My first
But
ever Lions game I ever went to, where I wanted to see, or no, that was Jeff Driscoll, not Tim Boyle. I was wrong. I was gonna say I was ready to see Stafford for the first time ever live, and he missed his first game in like fucking 5 years for Jeff Driscoll. Never forget.
uh,
Lost the game too.
you hate to see it. But he wasn't great in his time on the field. Obviously, cutting Daniel Jones midseason was a big move. I think that kind of lost the locker room for Brian Dable. Really kind of hard to recover from that. A lot of players like Daniel Jones. I mean, he was the face of the franchise, although I know that's a terrible face of the franchise to have. He kind of was. Um, but you move on from him, and really the season was kind of over at that point. But you got young guys like Malik Neighbors, like you said. Uh, you got guys to move forward with, and you just need to find the quarterback to put in position. Maybe it's Shadur Sanders, who knows? Maybe it's Cam Ward, or maybe they don't even get a chance at those two, and they got to settle with maybe a Jalen Milrow or go for a guy in free agency. Maybe you go get Sam Darnold. Who knows? Or maybe
Jackson
there's a
Dart.
Kyler Murray. Yeah, Jackson Dart. Maybe there's a Kyler Murray sweepstakes, though. I don't know. I would doubt it, but you never know.
If Milrow goes three, it better be as a wide receiver.
Yeah.
My God. Okay, we could finish off here then with our NFC East awards. Looking back at last year, almost all of mine are the same. Or not last year, sorry, beginning of the season. Almost all mine are the same. Offensive Rookie of the Year, I had Malik Neighbors. He ended up being phenomenal, the best rookie wide receiver in my opinion. We'll talk about Marvin Harrison in a couple weeks here, but Malik Neighbors, best rookie receiver in the draft, had a great year, was a dominant fantasy player as well when he was in the game, and he's a great weapon to walk into for whatever rookie quarterback gets to walk into that. Quinyon Mitchell, you could have gone him or Cooper DeJean really, but Quinyon Mitchell was the cornerback one in that room, and he was phenomenal. Of course, cornerback one on a Super Bowl winning team. His rookie year is so impressive. He was great out of Toledo. There's a lot of debate going into the draft who's the best corner, him or Terrion Arnold. Terrion Arnold. So far, it looks like him, and he's been great. Offensive Player of the Year, I had CeeDee Lamb going into the season. I'm going to go with Jaden Daniels. He had to have been at least Rookie of the Year, or Offensive Player of the Year for this division. So I ended up going with him for Offensive Player of the Year because of that playoff run. And like I said, I was just so impressed with his ability to stay in the game. He's a great, calm, composed player in the pocket, which you just do not see from rookies at the quarterback position in this league. Saw that from him right away, and we know what his talent on the ground is, and we didn't even get to see that to his full potential this year. So I think he's just going to continue to be a better and better quarterback. I think you're looking at a guy in Jaden Daniels who's got to be a perennial top 10 quarterback here really, really soon. Defensive player of the year, beginning of the year, I had Micah Parsons. I'm sticking with that. Micah Parsons had one of the most underrated seasons in football this year, in my opinion. He had 12 sacks in just 13 games with everyone hurt on his D line, facing double teams all year. The only other two players in the NFL with more than 7 sacks in less than 13 games was Hutch with 7.5 in 5 games, Crosby with 7.5 in 12 games, and then Micah Parsons with 12 in 13 games. He was phenomenal. And then MVP, of course, is Saquon Barkley. Best running back season we've seen in a long time. We said going into the season, you have one of the most talented backs in the league with one of the best offensive lines in the league. It's hard to see how that doesn't work out for them, especially when you're in a system where you're going to get 20, 25 carries a game. He was able to take care of that. He broke off big run after big run, touchdown after touchdown. And if he didn't have the tush push on his team, he probably would have had more touchdowns than James Cook. So Saquon Barkley, my MVP.
Yeah, going into the season, my MVP, I had CeeDee Lamb. I'm going to change that to Saquon Barkley. I think I mean, it's pretty easy to pick there. Saquon Barkley, Offensive Player of the Year, almost broke a long-standing record from Eric Dickerson. Didn't even have the chance to, but he was fantastic. He's obviously the MVP. I had him listed at the Opoy. I'm also going to switch that to Jaden Daniels. Was fantastic. Had led his team to the conference championship. Was far better than we could have imagined him to be. For Offensive Rookie of the Year, I had Malik Neighbors with an honorable mention to Jaden Daniels. I'm going to just make that Malik Neighbors. He was great. He had a lot of QBs he had to deal with. different quarterbacks. Obviously, Tim Boyle, like we said, Daniel Jones, Drew Lock. Uh, what's the Italian? I'm blanking on the
Tommy
Italian's
DeVito?
name. Tommy DeVito.
I almost said Danny again.
Yeah, that would have been funny. And then D. Roy. I had Quinyon Mitchell, but I'm just gonna make that the duo of Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean because they were fantastic. And then I
Not a
missed
safety.
Depoy. Yeah, he's not a safety. I had Depoy going in the season for this division, but I'm going to change as Micah Parsons. But I'm going to change that to Zach Bond. He was fantastic, led this Eagles defense all around. I think he finished fifth in Defensive Player of the Year voting. He was fantastic and just led that elite Eagles defense, wins the Super Bowl. So I'm going to go with Zach Bond.
All right, that will about do it for this episode of the Engage A podcast. If you made it this far, don't forget to leave us a like. Please subscribe to the channel. We will be back next week with another recap. We will be doing, what order do we do? So we will be doing the AFC and NFC West next episode. The episode after that, we will be doing the AFC and NFC South, and then finishing with the North on the last of the recaps, which will lead us right into March Madness at a perfect time, and then March Madness will lead us right into the NBA and NHL playoffs. So, looking forward to that. Be ready for that on Wednesday. Thank you, everybody, for making it this far. We'll see everyone in the next one.